You didn't think at continuing conversations we weren't going to talk about Star Trek Adventures new publications anymore, did you? Just because of our new format? No, no, no. Let's keep in mind, we know our foundation around here. Okay, so I'm Michael Dismuke. I'm the lead writer on Captain's Log RPG, also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG. In addition to other things, check out michaeldismuke.com. Many great things coming out this year. And this show is never a show unless we have with us Jim Johnson.
Hey everybody, Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, the Fallout RPG, Captain's Log, a bunch of other stuff at Modiphius Entertainment. Also a freelance writer for Star Trek and original properties and other stuff. You can check out my work on scribeandnetty.com. Other publications coming out this year that we'll talk about in due course in other episodes, but we haven't gotten there yet. So I will just talk about those as we talk about them. And I am super excited to have an all-star cast with me today to talk all about the brand new Star Trek Adventures supplement, the Species Sourcebook. It's been a fan request for a long time. It's been on my mind for a long time. I know it's been on Nathan's mind for a long time. I'm not sure what, were you showing it out there, Michael, on your tablet? It was kind of hard to see with the screen. I don't have my print copy handy. I would show off the print copy because, of course, I've got the print sample available. I don't have it in hand, but anyway, so I'm going to introduce our group, and we have two new visitors to the show, so I'm going to ask them the usual questions, and we'll start off with Stephen. Introduce yourself, please, and then after you introduce yourself, let me, tell the world which Star Trek series is most memorable, most impactful, most important to you, and of all the many Star Trek characters that are out there, which one had the most meaning to you?
Cool. Yeah. My name is Stephen Neer. I'm a freelance writer, playwright, and English teacher as well, educator. I live in Canada, in Hamilton, Canada. Been writing for the stage and various mediums for decades, really. But I've been a lifelong Star Trek fan, so having the chance to write for Star Trek Adventures and a lifelong RPG geek, I've played numerous games. So the opportunity to write for Star Trek Adventures has just been the biggest thrill of my life. So thank you for that opportunity, Jim. As for the Star Trek series that kind of resonates the most for me, I mean, really all the Star Trek franchises that kind of cropped up in the 90s are really the things that sort of speak to me the most. But I'm probably going to give, my most obvious answer is Star Trek Deep Space Nine, just because it had such an interesting and compelling narrative arc, and really was one of these shows that took a chance to break away from sort of the serialized episodic format into sort of large scale arcs. And really delved into really took some really great chances in terms of what kind of stories they could tell, in the pale moonlight, this sort of unreliable narrator, Far Beyond the Stars, which is in my mind like just one of the most fantastic science fiction episodes tackling racism and such. So it just, I don't know, it just spoke to me in really interesting ways, and it was kind of this slow burn Trek franchise that I immediately thought it was interesting, but wasn't sure how I felt about it. And then through the years, it just kind of is something I keep going back to again and again. And as for the Star Trek character that kind of resonates with me the most, that's a tough question. But I have to say probably Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. And I've always loved like Star Trek security officers. In fact, my first Star Trek character that I played in a game was a security officer, was an Andorian security officer. And I don't know. I love the idea of these sort of, I'm the stoic guardian of Starfleet values, but I'm the person that has to get their hands dirty to try and, protect those values so that the people in command can do what needs to be done. And I think no character really exemplifies that stance better than Tuvok. And I'll honestly, I just love watching Tim Russ kind of play this sort of stoic, I'm going to do what needs to be done, episode, in time and again. I just thought he brought so much depth to the character. So I think that would have to be my answer for that.
Good answer.
Fantastic. Those are great answers, man. Those are awesome answers. And just listening to you reminded me that, oh yeah, Tuvok was the security officer, and how fun to have like the traditional expectation of a Vulcan in a very different role, right? Because
Exactly.
we're so used to Spock being the science super cerebral kind of thing, and it's like, oh, now he's a security officer. That's really cool. Thanks, Stephen. Great stuff. And we'll go over to Rachael Cruz and have her introduce herself, and also the same questions for you. The TV series that was most impactful for you, and which character resonates the most with you.
Okay, well, hi, I'm Rachael. Full name Rachael Cruz. I've been a longtime writer of Star Trek Adventures. I've been a writer on Modiphius for a very long time. Still going strong. I'm still working on stuff like Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and of course our wonderful new book that we get to talk about today. I kind of am a little bit miffed with Stephen right now because he took the best answer, because I'm also a Deep Space Nine girl. So, and for the exact reasons, it's like, I remember watching these things going, wait a second, they can have full story arcs? I didn't know that was allowed. Oh my God, I got to tune back in, and just, I loved the depth of story that they decided to, start investigating. And just like, they've got so many series, and despite all that, I always go back to DS9. It might be because the Cardassians are my all-time favorites, but
Yes.
right
Yes.
Absolutely. Great answer.
Oh my God, yeah, I adore them, and I'm sad. I'm so sad that history is doing what they're doing, and the Cardassians are moving along. I hope we get to see, I don't know, some extra bit in the future about them.
It's okay. There's still
I miss my
years of gap
Cardassian.
that we could still fill in, Rachel. You're
Yeah,
right.
right.
So you have 800 years.
Yeah, like I remember doing all like the research and all that stuff for the Cardassians, and I remember finding so much stuff that I had to go back and watch again because I hadn't caught little bits here and there. For example, like there are so many intricacies in just even their social norms that I thought, when I was watching them, like when I was growing up, I thought I caught everything, and oh my God, of course I didn't. And when I went back to rewatch that series, it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, how does everyone not love and sympathize with the Cardassians? Yeah, they did some shit. Pardon my language. I hope you can like bleep that.
You'll be okay. Just
sorry, married a New Yorker.
I'm trying to guess which character resonates with you the most now that you love Cardassian so much.
Well, that's the problem. Like, it seems kind of a cheap answer to say, Garrick, because hey, how many layers does that guy have? But honestly, it's Garrick, because you never really know everything. That's like, where's he been? Where's he's only showing you this much. And that kind of mystery kind of tantalizes me.
Oh, if you like that, by the way, hint to everybody out there, pick up Una McCormick's latest Picard book with Rafi as lead. If you like, I'm not going to give spoilers.
Yeah, thank you.
But excellent.
But I will go ahead and write that down. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes me think if you're thinking about the optional rules for secrets in the I think the Aspiration Guide. I think the player character, or the player playing Garrick, right? He's got like no stress because he's got so many secrets piled on top of secrets, right? He's like that's why he pretends he's the tailor, because he doesn't actually get into any altercations or anything.
Right?
It's like, I have so many secrets, I can't do anything, otherwise I'm going to get hurt.
Totally.
Or he'll reveal one secret and then just cash in for another one, and he'll just have layers and layers and layers. So really cool, great answers, Rachel. And next to introduce, probably needs no introduction, but you all know Nathan. But Nathan, introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you're working on now and what you did for this book, and then we'll carry on.
As you all probably know, I'm Nathan Dowdell. I'm the senior game designer for RPGs at Modiphius, the lead designer for Star Trek Adventures, both first and second edition, and basically, and almost any other game involving 2D20 that Modiphius publishes themselves. Though there are an increasing number of 2D20 games that I've had no direct hand in now, thanks to our world builders and other such projects. Of late, I've been working on a number of Star Trek books at Jim's behest, one of which we'll be talking about later on. At present, just to ease myself into the new year of work, I've been working away on some conversion material from converting a source book from first edition to second edition. It's one of the big ones, one of the big rules heavy ones. I think it's the Klingon war tactical campaign, which is a lot of conversion material to bring that up to spec. There's a lot of stat blocks and extended tasks and extra game mechanics that need adjusting there.
But thank you, because I need them, because I'm running a Klingon campaign right now. So you don't know how your timing was perfect.
Yeah, really grateful for it. I haven't shouted it out enough, but super grateful that you had the time in your schedule last year to start working on those conversion documents, as the fans are really, really appreciating them. So, and I know we just released the Klingon Empire core book document right on Christmas, and fans are super excited for that. So I know there's more of those to come, and of course,
there's a load of them. Yeah, there's loads on the way. I've done a sizable number of them.
Yep.
Am I allowed to say which ones I've already worked on, or do you want to leave those as surprises?
I think we should leave them as surprises for now.
Feel free to send them to me to proof if you need. If you just need, I'm good. I'm on NDA. You can send them to me.
I've handed them off to Jim already. If he wants to share them around, it's up to him.
I will just say that a couple of them I wanted to wait for the species source book to come out, because I didn't want to accidentally spoil anything. So
that is true. There are a number where there's the species book overlaps with the content in the older books.
Right. But yeah, expect more of those conversion documents to come in 2026. And then, of course, Nathan, I'm sure there'll be more work to come for Star Trek Adventures, because we got 2027 and 2028 to be working on. So the engine doesn't stop, right? The Star Trek machine continues on forward. So
don't turn off the warp core. It'll take ages to restart it.
Oh, that's right. And then, so you nicely segued. You mentioned both the World Builders program and the tactical campaign. So, Al Spader, introduce yourself and talk about how you connect to both of those projects.
Awesome. Yeah. Hi, I'm Al Spader. I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures and Octung Cthulhu now. And I was also one of the first World Builders projects out there with Sentience. We did a Kickstarter. Michael helped a lot with that. It was awesome. I'm also the designer of Once Upon and Redacted, the conspiracy role-playing game. I wrote that with Aaron Pollier.
All right, super cool. Well, what a great group of people we have here today. And so this is the group, Al, Stephen, Rachel, and Nathan that put all their hard work into the brand new species source book that's now available for pre-order from Modiphius. We'll be looking at launching the print version of that will be out in April, but you can go pre-order it right now, get the PDF in your hot hands, and start making use of it, because I know that fans have been asking for this pretty much as soon as second edition launched, because we packed as many species as we could into the core book, but there's only so many pages that we can fit, and we knew, even when we were developing second edition, we knew we wanted to do a full-blown species books, which is something that we haven't done before. Of course, if you've been with us for a while, first edition, we sprinkled in species through the quadrant books and did 15 or 12 to 15 species per book, which is kind of the thing you do in RPGs. But what that means is, as you get into the line, you're like, oh, I want this species. Which book do I need? And then you're shuffling 5-6 different books, trying to find the one species you're looking for. Fortunately, BC Holmes' fantastic Star Trek Adventures character app has everything, piled into it. But for those that still weren't familiar with that, you were still looking for what book do I need? What book do I use? And then once we transitioned to second edition, a lot of those species we didn't have room to fit all 100 plus species into the book. So we knew looking ahead, we were going to be doing a dedicated species source book. So Nathan, maybe talk a little bit about the development of the book, where we had a really long list of species. It reminded me a little bit of Utopia Planitia, when we had like a gigantic list of like 100 space frames we wanted to include in the book, and then we had to start cutting. But I remember with the species book, we had a really long list of species that we wanted to include. And talk a little bit about, from your perspective, how did we winnow down that list?
From your, I think you started with the big list of all the ones that we had done, and the list of every species that you could find, many of which that we'd done in first edition in the Quadrant books or in various other source books, because there's some in Lower Decks and some in the Discovery campaign guide and some in the Klingon War campaign, and there's scattered all over the place. And so we had that huge long list of them, and then I approached it from a different perspective of ones that I wanted to include for a different reason. I had my base list of these are all main cast members and regular cast members of the shows and movies, and so I wanted all of those species to be covered by the mechanics somewhere. And we'd got on a decent run of the most common ones across the franchise in the core book, especially with the expanded list in second edition with the Klingons and the Romulans and the Cardassians and the ANR and the Ferengi. Covers like 90% of our main characters from the shows, but there were still a number of obvious absences, especially from more recent shows and other entries. And we made a point of if they're a main character, I made a point of insisting if they're a main character in a Star Trek show or movie, then they get a species entry in this book, which means we do have some odd inclusions, like Nanokin, who only appeared for the first time in section 31. But it was an interesting list, going from each of us going from it in two different directions and reaching this eventual compromise of, I can't remember the final number, and I've got the contents list here, but it's a good few dozen species entries.
Yep, we ended up with 60 in the book, and we knew going into it that it would need to be a 2-page spread for each species, because you need to include the species talents and some information and some lore, et cetera, about them. And for the fans that have been asking for this, even from first edition, right, we made sure to include artwork for every species in the book, so that you don't have to go to Memory Alpha, you don't have to go to the internet. You can see the species in each book. Yeah. I know that's something I wanted to do in first edition, but we just didn't have the room or the budget to do art for literally every single species. I know it was a really big fan ask to do that, but but
fun opportunities with the art as well. I remember there were a few that I had. I don't normally get involved in that side of things, but I remember I had a few specific suggestions for the character art on a couple of them, specifically the Mirror Universe Terran. I specifically wanted it to be a mirror universe version of the human art that we had in the core book. And the Lurian Morn species, who are always described as being hairy, but all of the depictions of them in the shows have been bald, like Morn. So
the greatest art in this book.
The Lurian has huge hair.
It's amazing.
It's like the 80s rock, 80s hair band, 80s rock band, Morn. I love it. It was really great. But yeah, so I mean, just the way this book worked out in terms of the development, Section 31, the movie, came out, at just the right time that we were able to add in the Nanokin and add a little bit of information to the Deltans and a couple of the other species, just in terms of like referencing the characters that were in
Deltans and the Cameloids, the main
Cameloids, yeah. Yeah. And so, it was a lot of fun to work on those with you and to do some of the artwork. There's some great Easter eggs hidden in the artwork. So hopefully fans will check those out. I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to reveal any of them. But I think, just as an anecdote, this book has at the moment, my single most favorite piece of artwork that we've done for Star Trek Adventures. And that's the spread for the main chapter with the kind of the wrestling match happening between, Ensign Tenon and Lieutenant Hernandez, which are two of our iconic Strange New Worlds era characters, and then a Phalosian and the blue skinned alien. He's similar to the one that's in Star Trek VI that Kirk encounters on Rurapente. These two characters, celebrating, doing the celebration, and then the two Starfleet officers in the background going like, "What do we do? We don't know what we're doing." So I think that when I got that draft from Ariel, our art director, I was like, "Oh my gosh, the artist just nailed this brief perfectly." And I know a couple of you have had an opportunity to write art briefs for me and for the line, and you know that excitement of writing an art brief and then seeing the actual art together, and it's like, "Oh, they got it! They totally got it!" And it was just really exciting to see that. But anyways, there's some other Easter eggs scattered throughout some of the other artwork. I hope people will discover them. A couple of them, the licensor was like, "Do you really want to do that?" And I was like, "Yes, we've got to do that because it's got to be an Easter egg for the fans to enjoy." So, but the licensor was happy with it. Ultimately, I convinced them on a couple of things. They had no problems with all the other.
Are you going to tell us some of those, Jim?
No, but I think I'll just give you one. The one piece of art that our licensing review team had a question about was the binars. Because there's a specific device in the artwork of the binars that they weren't sure they wanted to have in the art. But I was like, "Oh no, come on, you got to do it. It's fan service."
Very cool.
And ultimately, I convinced them to include it. So take a good if you're an old gray haired Star Trek fan like me, you'll probably recognize it. But if not, we can talk about it on the Discord. Anyway, so fortunately, Nathan had some time in his schedule last year, so he was able to write the bulk of this book, which was kind of a departure from first edition, where you didn't have to write quite so much and you were busy working on other things. And so in the discovery phase of working on a book, you get all the text and you put it together and you start putting together the layout with the graphic design team, and you're like, "Oh, we've got huge gaps of white space." And I like white space, but there was a lot of white space in this book. Once you get the character information in, you get the artwork, and then you get the talent information. And I was like,
not every species lends itself to the same amount of text.
Right.
And some had more to fit in than others.
Right. So early on, I was able to identify that I needed what I kind of ended up calling the Tribble team, instead of a Tiger team, because Tiger teams, that's boring and corporate. I want a Tribble team. So I reached out to Stephen, Rachel, and Al, and I said, "Look, I've got 60 species, and probably 45 of them need some little bits. We need some information. We need some random tables. We need some sidebars. We need just additional lore and errata, or not errata, but bits to really just add more flavor to this book and to really add more information." And I think you all did a fabulous job. So I guess my question for you, just the three of you, whatever order you want to do it in, just what was your reaction to getting the assignment? How did you approach the tranche of species that you were given as your assignments? And what was memorable? What did you have fun doing? Whatever you wanted, whatever order. Maybe Rachel, you want to run first?
Sure, that sounds fun. Oh my, many questions. So of course I love working on Trek, and so anytime I get tagged in, I often get tagged in for little flavor pieces here and there. So it was really, really fun to be able to basically be handed a third of the book and go "Hey, do some flavor." I'm like, the way I usually do that, especially with this book, is that I would read the information that Nathan had already written down, and I would try to see what kind of flavor text or tables or whatever would be the most useful there, or the most fun, let's be honest. And then I would figure out the voice that the sidebar needed, and there we go. Because of the method that I use, I know it sounds trite, but I loved doing all of them. There was a table that I did for potential mishaps if your translator goes off, goes a little wrong, or if your breathing apparatus gets hurt in the middle of a mission or something. And it can be anything from, oh, well, it's a tiny little like ding on the apparatus. So you just talk in a squeaky voice to, okay, well, now you have only a limited amount of time before your device just stops. So you need to find a way to breathe. So I just really loved doing stuff like that. And I have to admit, there was one, ironically, also the breathing apparatus. I guess I found my favorite one. I guess it was the breathing apparatus. As side flavor for the breathing apparatus, I was able to bring in an old character who I had originally written for back in the original Star Trek Adventures Alpha Quadrant. He was a Ferengi who was trying at the time to sell some vacation land in Cardassia right on top of their most active volcano. So now I was able to bring him in and like, oh, hey, new business venture. Cheap and still totally fine breathing apparatuses for you to use. Not responsible for any loss of life in regards to this. But yeah, every time I get to like read these snippets of these species and then do something with that, it just tickles me in all the right way.
Oh, it's awesome to hear. And I just wanted to add one quick anecdote. Just the way the book worked out in terms of the order of species, and I mean, literally, we present them alphabetically, but it just worked out that the Barzan and the benzites are two of the species that need breathing apparatus. So
yes.
to be able to put that little section about the breathing apparatus in right there in between the Barzans and the benzites, I was like, oh, this is perfect, because it's like it covers both of them and we're good to go. So we didn't have to do a lot of cross referencing.
Yeah,
and I appreciate it too. Just so you know, Rachel, is because at my tabletop group, which we play once a month, one of our characters is a benzite, and I used it.
Oh, thank you! Yay!
Yeah,
that makes me so happy.
Yeah, it was really
That's
cool.
awesome. Fantastic.
We had a similar kind of layout synchronicity moment with having human augments and Illyrians right next to each other in the order as well, because that meant there's a whole cluster of augment talents that both can use, all on the same few pages.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I would love to be, I would love to fib to the world and say, yeah, we totally planned it, but it's just the way it worked out. It was just one of those happy accidents. Once you get into the book and you get into the layout and you start pulling it all together, it's like, oh yeah, it all worked. Yeah, great call out, Nathan. All right, Stephen and or Al, which one would one of you like to talk a little bit about your anecdotes with the species that you were responsible for?
I'll take a shot. So I will say when I got news that you were looking for a freelancer on the species book, I jumped out of my chair and did a little dance throughout my home. It was just the biggest thrill. The first thing that I wrote for Star Trek was a mission brief on political action, and that was a real thrill for me. But that had been a pitch, so I hadn't pitched you on this. So when you sort of approached me about it, it was just incredible. And then getting the assignment, I mean, I followed the same type of path as Rachel, where I kind of went through, the species that I was going to be writing about, and the first thing I did was look at the text that Nathan had looked at. I will admit, though, that there were quite a number of species that were included in the list that I was not really familiar with at all. I mean, there were the few that I knew really well, like the Talaxians and and several others like or the Zakdorn, right? But there were a number of them that I was like, I don't know, like the Ragellians. I was not familiar with them at all. So what I found myself doing with a lot of the prep work was doing like really big deep dives into beta canon stuff, or rewatching episodes or shows that I had not really done a lot of watching. In all honesty, I never watched a lot of Enterprise, so I was not really very familiar with the Xindi at all. And that was my big assignment, was to do the Xindi. So I ended up doing a really deep dive on alpha, on main canon sources, but also in beta canon, on stuff around the Xindi. And I thought that for me, that was the most fascinating part of the work that I did for this book was diving into like other sources that other people have written with regards to some of these species, and then going, oh, okay, so how could I sort of fill in with that and play around with sort of the you know, how the sort of empty time frames between the original series and TNG and then TNG and like beyond that, right? So I thought that was the most fascinating thing for me.
So I have to ask, just since you had to do all that research on Xindis, did you end up watching Enterprise?
Oh yeah. Well, I had sort of watched. I had watched bits and pieces of Enterprise, but I had never really. I honestly, it had never really made a huge impression on me. But so I revisited it, is what I did, and was like, oh, okay. Like, so here's that. Like like for instance, the one Xindi that kind of that I think Degra that Archer kind of kidnaps and then sort of gets the basically uses him to get information about the weapon and stuff like that. Like that whole sort of plot, the Xindi plot in, I guess it was third season, was just like, this is the most fascinating political stuff. And it sort of in many ways it renewed my interest in Star Trek Enterprise, because I sort of was dealing with all of these different species. But I think for me the most interesting thing was okay, how, like for example with the Xindi, how do the Xindi fit into Star Trek in the TNG era when they're, you know, apparently part of it? And of course, there was also some beta canon around that, like, you know, which like was there was a Xindi, there was now a new Xindi home world and whatnot. So again, I was sort of trying to figure out like different ways in which sort of beta canon might suggest to pieces that I would write for the species book. And then sort of the other aspect that I approached with regards to the writing was how much of what I was writing would be sort of first person in universe stuff, and how much of it would be sort of game related game text. And I think for me that was the biggest challenge, because I come from a theater playwriting background, so I'm used to writing sort of first person dialogue in universe type stuff. And so sort of finding the balance between writing, say, a log entry by a captain who is a Xindi and is fighting during the Cardassian War, and sort of reflecting on the parallels between the Cardassian War and the war between humanity and the Xindi, versus, say, flavor text about you know, how a certain species like how I think Saurian, like the Saurians, when I wrote about the Saurians, it was like Saurian brandy like immediately comes to mind when you think about Saurians, which then kind of got me thinking about writing just a little flavor piece on the importance of drinking and how alcohol and scenes that involve drinking are used within stories and can be used to kind of, you know, modify or assist in sort of a social challenge, if you will. So that was sort of the biggest interest, the biggest sort of opportunity, and I think a challenge for me also as a writer is figuring out the balance between in-universe character writing versus gaming reflection pieces. And it was a real joy to try and to play around with that balance from a creative writing standpoint.
Yeah, I think all four of you did a really nice job of mixing up the in-person sidebars with the gameable, usable stuff, right? I mean, Nathan, all four of you added a lot of that, and I think you know, as an RPG, and I was reminded of this recently, that you know, playing an RPG, you need so much information to play your character, right? You just need a depth of information and lore that the TV series may not always be able to present, right? So you need to go to a much deeper level, and that's why, like, you know, FASA and Last Unicorn Games and Decipher and us add so much more detail to the games, and that's where it's really important to have those gameable sidebars to say, hey, here's this stuff that's happening in universe. Here's how to apply it to your RPG. But it's also important to have those sidebars too, those in-character sidebars, because that gives you a sense of like, what is it like? What is life like in this universe from this character's perspective or from this species perspective? And I was just grateful to see that all the work that you guys were doing, or you folks were doing, was a nice balance between those two. I think there was a couple times where I went back to somebody and said, this might work better as a first-person sidebar, or this might work better as a you know, GM oriented or player oriented sidebar. But yeah, you guys did some great work with that stuff. Al, what were some of your perspectives?
So the coolest thing when we got this is that we actually got to see kind of like a pseudo layout to know how much space we had to fill. So we knew we had a word count that we were trying to achieve, and we knew that with certain species, we only had like a little bit to fill. That was going to be 50 words, right? Whereas if other species, we saw some more white space, we're like, oh, this can be our random table, right? Or something, or a longer writing piece. So that was very, very helpful to actually see that from a writer perspective. Because normally when we do these projects, we're just writing blind. We don't know where the layout's going to be. We don't know what it's going to, but this was our first opportunity to have a chance to write for the space that we see. So that was very, very cool. And I think it really helped us with our word counts. For me, I've always doubted my ability to get into the voice of characters from Star Trek, just because it's just something that makes me nervous. So I pushed myself. I wrote a couple of character sidebars. I think they both came out pretty good. One with Odo and Quark that I'm very proud of. And so that kind of like built up my confidence a bit to be able to do this just a little bit more. So that was awesome. I also got to pull in some beta sources as well. So I actually referred to something that the Rittenhouse trading cards have introduced in one of their trading card sets, all about the Baul and the Kelpians. So we got a little bit of lore from that in there. And then I was emailing back and forth with Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly on one of the sidebars that I was put in. I got a whole sidebar about the Red Path in from the comic books, and they were pumped when I reached out and talked to them about that. So yeah, very cool experience.
Hey, and Jim, can we also talk about the art on the cover? Like what was the development design process on that? I know that you've made a distinct goal with 2E to continue the story of the Challenger crew through the artwork. Can you talk to us about this dynamic piece of artwork?
Yeah, for sure. So I think Ariel Aurier and our director for Star Trek several years now, and I we're working on the briefs for this, and we're like, okay, we want to. So of course, the 23rd Century Sourcebook that just came out was a bit of a departure for the line because we wanted to experiment and see how would the book work and respond to fans if we put the talent on the cover, right? We got the six of the main actors on the cover there. And then for the Species book, we wanted to go back to the iconics that we've been doing on the other second edition books. And I was like, okay, what can we do that's different, but also kind of presents a spectrum of alien species, right? We didn't want just a bunch of headshots, and we didn't want to do just like a conference, like in Star Trek 3 and 4, where you see all those interesting aliens kind of in the background of the Federation Council, right? We didn't want to just do like a Federation Council with like a billion species in your face. We wanted to do something a little bit more interesting. And so I think it was Ariel who came up with the idea of like, why don't we have the Challenger in space dock, like loading on a bunch of people to go on, whether it's a mission or maybe they're being, transited to another base or a colony or something. Like, who knows? Like, you can come up with whatever story you want here. And I was like, well, yeah, that's cool. So let's put the main iconics, like the captain and some of the other known characters from the quick start. Let's put them on the cover, and then have like a waiting line of species in the background, kind of. And so you kind of get a hint of some of the species that are available in the franchise, not so much the book necessarily, but from the franchise on the front cover. And then of course that it's a wraparound cover onto the back, showing more of the species and some more of the things going on. So that was kind of the general idea. And then,
the interior spread too on page 134 and 135. I hate when you give me art. I love it, but I hate it, Jim, when you give me art where I'm like, oh man, now I have to start up a new campaign because you have this total non-Federation rogue gallery ranging from Nausicaans to evil Vulcan, to a Gorn to a Kazon. And right away, my mind started telling the story, like, how does a Kazon hook up with all this group of people? Like, where are they at? And yes, I'm going to now have to play this because we have the full artwork for the characters. I can whip up the sheets. So talk about that piece of art. It's amazing.
Yeah, especially the end papers. We want to do something a little bit different because, like, of course, in first edition, I think most of our end papers were maps of some sort, like some sort of map related to the quadrant or related to the subject matter, and that's fine. But we wanted to do something different for second edition, and we'd already done kind of the maps on the end papers for a couple of our second edition books. And I was like, okay, let's do something different. What can we do artwork wise? And Ariel again, and I went back and forth on the art briefs, and so for these two, the front end papers is a collection of Federation officers and civilians in a Star Trek or in a space dock kind of environment, which was cool. And then for the back one, I was like, well, let's have some assortment of adversaries, and we didn't really specify a story for the artist to go with. Give us several adversaries and kind of a campsite or something. And this is actually one of the art pieces that our licensor review team had a question about. They were like, why are these 6 species here, right? Well, what's the story here? And I was like, shoot, we have to explain it. So I think what we came up with was this is from a holodeck program from a Federation officer who is putting together this holodeck program of some of the Federation's most significant adversaries over the centuries. And so you got a Romulan, you got a Klingon, you got a Nausicaan, et cetera. And a Gorn, and we just made it work, right? But of course, the Orion, that's Zarakethix from the quick start. You got a Kazon in there, and then the Nausicaan was a kind of a call out to the starter set because, of course, Eratogsa was a key character in there, and so the Nausicaan was a connection to the starter set as well as the Nausicaan entry in the book itself because we actually the glyphs that were on that piece of artwork, Michael, that you commissioned, or not commissioned, but you wrote the art brief for. We pulled those glyphs off of that piece of artwork and dropped it into the bottom of the Nausicaan.
Go look at that again.
And just saying that, I want to give a big shout out to Mihao Cross. He was our graphic designer on this book. He and I, after we got all of your inputs and added your sidebars and your other bits and bobs, we discovered we still had some white space that we had to fill. And he and I just spent weeks what on earth are we going to put in here? Because we don't have time to have more stuff written for the book, because then we'd have to go through another review cycle. And it's like, okay, well, let's really dig into the archives here. So we did a deep dive into all the Star Trek artwork that we could possibly find. And I mean, we've got a lot of our artwork over 9 years of working on the game line, but even just watching the show, finding random things in the background that we could pull out. And so a lot of the incidental art and some of the drop-in icons and stuff that you'll find scattered throughout the book was just Mihao and I okay, we've got an eighth of a page, we've got a quarter of a page. What can we fit in here that's not just thematic to Star Trek, but it's also thematic to this specific species, right? So we spent a lot of time working on that. So Mihao, I think, created more original, incidental art for this book than he has on other things. There's a couple sneaky reuses from first edition that we were able to pull in and make use of. I think the one that I can think of off the top of my head is the Talaxian lungs that was used in the Delta Sourcebook, because everybody wondered what happened to Neelix's lungs. Well, here they are. They're in the book. So we reused that. We had a lot of fun. Ariel and I had a lot of fun working on those art briefs, and the artists, I think, just did a great job with those end papers and the cover as well. And then anecdotally,
whoever wants to join, I'll send an invitation out for people to play my Star Trek meets Firefly episode when I do these characters.
Nice. And while you all were talking, I was jotting down some notes, and I realized that how cool would it be, somebody out there, whether it's one of us or somebody, one of the fans who are watching, have a crew of all Xindi aquatics and cetaceans, right? Do a total aquatic player character campaign, right? You can do that now, or have a campaign with everybody has the ability to fly, right? Have some cloacons and some Aurelians and some of the other species that can fly. There's so much you can do with this thing now. In fact, this is a question for all of you. I want to hear your perspectives as gamers and game masters, and also just gamers, right? We're all lifelong gamers. What's the value of a species book for an RPG line, whether it's Star Trek or another game line? Why even bother having a species book, right? What does this bring to the game table that you might not have otherwise?
If I may,
Rachel, please.
The question is okay. So when I play a game, when I run a game, For me, I like having all these little details around, and especially in a universe as huge as Star Trek, I love having the ability to, get ideas. Like, okay, I'm going to have my characters going into this particular quadrant in this particular system. Who's going to be there, and what is that particular adventure going to feel like? And it can vary so very wildly just by what species are going to be found there, what the environment is. So for me, stuff like having a species book on hand, super duper helpful. And even, and perhaps especially, if I don't know what adventure I'm going to be running or anything like that, species books and similar similar guides, I guess. They are such a huge source of story inspiration. Like, I will read, say, a little blurb or an interesting table, and suddenly I'm like, oh my God, there's my story. Because what if, like, now we know what my heroes are going to be doing? I find such a huge value in just being able to page through and look at the amazing art and like read random bits and bobs that I hadn't thought I needed. And suddenly I can't live without these. These have to be in my campaign. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, there's
you
never
can
enough
get
room to
so
stuff
much
it all in. That's the problem of reading it too, Rachel, right? It's like,
yeah,
we have to play more games.
Yeah, it's exactly like you were saying. Like, you see a piece of art and you're like, well, now I have to do an entire new adventure because I need to know how these guys meet up.
Yeah.
So I'm so there with you.
Well, in line with what Rachel says too, Jim, it's like when I go through the talents, I'm not reading them specifically for the character that they've been attributed to. I'm thinking, how can I rename them and tweak them so that if I want to create some really alien creature, I can grab 3 or 4 of these amazing, I mean, we have hundreds of new talents in here, right? And tweak it without having to do all that mechanical work myself. I'm like, oh, I can take this and this and this and this. So that's how I use it. Even if you go to, as a cheat for people to know, if you go to BC Home's site, at the very bottom of the talent selection, she has other as an option. So you could cut and paste some of the language from that and take it down to the other and tweak it and call that talent whatever you want. So again, it just adds to the endless repository of language and game mechanics. And again, just the language too. Sometimes what I'll do is look at the language and the talent to explain something when I'm writing Star Trek, because it's done for me. The explanation is there. It's pulled from canon, right? So to me, it's just an additional research book,
I think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Of that in mind, Michael, what did you think of the last chapter of the book, the Create Your Own Species section?
Loved it. Yeah, love it. Again, it's expediting the process. For some people need the form. I know some people, I'm super creative, so believe me, I don't need that kind of form, but I know people who play the game who get that, and then they're like, oh, thank you, and they can work right through it quickly. So I thought it was a really good prompt.
It felt like a must-have, that section, because so many Star Trek shows will come along and just go, oh, by the way, here's this species that you've never heard of, and they've been here all along. And that's something that often gets lost in a lot of licensed RPGs, because the opportunity to just do, here's this character that's the only one of their kind in Starfleet that we've never heard of before. Well, that's a story that Star Trek tells a lot, but it doesn't get told often at the table.
Yeah, but you're right. We're supposed to be exploring strange new life forms, right? So we have to have a mechanism to create them. Yeah.
You're absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nathan. Or go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, and I just wanted to actually build on that. Like it's cool because actually in the campaign that I'm actually running, there's an alien species that wasn't covered in this book. And so I actually really appreciated that there was this segment at the end that said, here's how you create your own species. So I've actually gone in and said, okay, here's this species from Trek that I want, that is going to be like this major antagonist in my own campaign that I can like now build using a lot of the same stat blocks and use the same sort of process. as in this game. For me, the real value of this book kind of goes back to I think one of the things that I find really, really cool about second edition in general is that it's not just sort of Alpha Quadrant Federation Starfleet based species. Like we're running the gamut, and I think for me that's really interesting because it allows in my own game and obviously in sort of covering the Star Trek world in general to look at all sort of small corners of Star Trek lore and go, here's this sort of here's this alien species that was in a couple of episodes, and here's sort of here's even this small little lore about it that can sort of launch you into all sorts of interesting ideas. I think for me, like the best example was one of the races one of the species that I wrote about, which was the Iridians, who are this small little, like they're these sort of information broker type characters that have appeared in a bunch of the episodes, and I just found them the most fascinating race around the idea of what does information mean to them, and what is their culture, how does their culture revolve around information, and how can I use that? And as a result of my work on this book, Uridians have become this sort of little plot point of my own campaign, in terms of seeding plot about this sort of conspiratorial aspect of something that happened in two of my players' characters' pasts, and it's really, really cool because the actual the ability that the Iridians have in this game was like one of the talents kind of directly came into sort of some social negotiation play that we had. So it was really neat to kind of use a lot of the mechanics that were in play in an actual game scenario. And I'll also shout out to Rachael as well. The captain who's an NPC in my game is Barzan. So I kind of made use of that table of okay, something went wrong with her breathing apparatus. So it was it's really, really cool. I just think that the value of a book like this, I think really just goes beyond here's a catalog of all these different items, right? I think because of the lore that we had the chance to write up, I think it allows anyone to kind of pick it up and go, oh, here's something really interesting. And I think it can apply to any part of Star Trek, right? Like if you pick up the Xindi, you're like, oh, how do the Xindi how do they sort of play out in the TNG era, or the Illyrians, or the Remans, right? So I just think that for me it's a beautiful illustration of just like the diversity of the Star Trek world.
You sparked something in me too, Stephen. I think, Jim, what you've intentionally created is the Marvel Universe guide of Star Trek, because that got me into playing RPG initially. Was, I have all this information, I got to play. And I used it as my index to create characters and pull villains into my Marvel superheroes game. And if I was back to being 13-year-old Michael and saw this, I'd be like, I'm playing this game because I want to get into these characters.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is really important here, Jim, is as we try to do with all of our books, we have stuff in here for players and we have stuff in here for GMs, right? So GMs, don't think that this is just a player book. We've got tons of lore in here. We've got the random tables that are linked to the species, but you could use them in other ways as well. Nathan, I think even you got the ship's cook role in here with the Cloukans and whatnot.
So they were too cooking focused to not include it.
It was amazing. I laughed so hard when I got to that sidebar. I'm like, this is perfect. So there's plenty of other stuff in here for GMs to use, in their games as well. So I'm really excited that we were able to make that happen as well.
Yeah,
at the very least. Sorry, Jim.
No, go ahead, Nathan.
But at the very least, the fodder for NPCs as well, because all the same stat attribute bonuses and things like that can be used in NPCs, and it takes a minimum amount of effort to tweak species abilities and species talents to be NPC abilities. as I've been doing repeatedly with my conversion documents and other projects. Yeah, it's a really useful tool for the GM on just that small practical side, as well as the bigger inspirational stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. As a game master, even just looking at the table of contents is a huge lift for me as a list of species, because I think when I'm in the moment in a game and I need to come up with a quick NPC, I have a small list in my head of go-to species, right, to drop in, and it's like, oh, I'm kind of tapped out because like I always go to the same it's always a Bolian or it's always a an Andorian or something or Klingon or something. It's like, oh, I need to diversify this a bit more. So even just having the table of contents on hand, just to point at something very, very different, really helps a lot. And then I've discovered I've also used it as project manager, of course, because as Ariel and I are working on art briefs for the next books, I was like, okay, we need some more diversity in our artwork for these things. We need a different kind of species here. We need a different species here. Because I caught myself working on those art briefs and like, oh, let's add in an Andorian and a Packlet and this other thing. It's like, wait, we're kind of hitting the same species over and over again. Let's diversify this a little bit more. So even just having the table of contents has helped a lot. Anecdotally, just one other quick thing while you were talking and offering such great information is that I don't think this was intentional, but it just kind of how it worked out is like, I think we hit every TV series and movie in here. We've got the Horta and we've got the Zindi and we've got movie species and we've got Next Gen DS9 Voyager, Picard, even Discovery 32nd Century. So I think we've covered the entire franchise. I think we even sneaked in just a couple little teeny tiny references to what we knew about Starfleet Academy, because we knew that the captain is a Lanthanite, and we didn't really reference the question mark about the Jem'Hadar, the female Jem'Hadar hybrid.
It was mainly Pelia. It was mainly dealing with Pelia.
Right.
And speculating on that.
But and we got some prodigy species in too.
Got a couple.
Yeah, we've got those in there. The Brickar
and I want to encourage people to play more Osnilus. I think that's one of the greatest characters makeups that I've seen that came out of Discovery. I think Jim, I put in the art for the book with Uratoxa. I put an Osnilus character in there. I did it actually twice in two of the arts I commissioned. But I know I'm dying for someone to play that on my game or online or really get into them.
I had a lot of fun brainstorming the Osnilus.
Did you do it?
What am I going to do this? Yeah.
They're so cool. I love what you read up about them. And I needed it too, because I said, I need someone to play them. So.
Right. And I'm grateful that Nathan, I'm glad we were able to find a way to squeeze in the blue Orions from the
Orions,
animated series. The Orions from the animated series, and also Lower Decks. So fans of the Star Trek, the animated series, the original one that came out in the 70s, we've got the Kazinti and the blue Orions.
Well, the Exocomps for fans of the fans of Peanut Hamper, both of them, whoever they may be.
Plow cans and the Exocomps, yeah, absolutely. So one thing I didn't have an opportunity to do while we were developing this book that I'm hoping fans will take the exercise and run with, or we can do it maybe on some we can do some riffing episodes, is that between the huge list of new talents that are in the book, Michael alluded to, we have hundreds of new talents in the book, but also Nathan, that chapter you wrote at the end of the book that shows off all those new species abilities, between that last chapter of species abilities options and all the new talents, I wonder if it's possible, like every species that we've seen on screen in Star Trek, I wonder if we can recreate it using the tools in this book. Like I know the original series especially had all kinds of interesting species that you really don't know anything about other than what they look like because you see them on screen, right? But I remember some diplomatic scenes where there was all kinds of different characters doing stuff. And I wonder, my question for you all was, not so much who did we miss, like what species did we miss, but if we wanted to do a species source book 2, like a sequel to this, like what's left? Like what species haven't we hit yet? And what species couldn't you likely create given the tools that you've got in second edition now?
Well, I'll say, so the species that kind of stood out, and I've used the mechanics from this book to create is, honestly, my favorite antagonistic species, which is the Talarians. I actually wrote an adventure for them in my mission briefs. I love this species. I think they're one of the more interesting antagonistic species that was sort of just touched on in one episode of TNG and then kind of forgotten about.
And you saw us play it, right, Stephen? On the
I did. I was so thrilled by that. I just thought, and they're kind of going to be becoming this sort of major antagonist in my own campaign, mainly because there's nothing done with them, so I'm going to sort of be involving them. But I've used a lot of the tools in the species book to kind of create, what does this species look like? And it's interesting because it's not just a question of, well, what are the abilities, right? It goes into kind of because there's so little known, you sort of have to make up, well, what is the culture around this species? Do they have, what are their family units? What are their cultural values, right? And how does that inform their talents or their special abilities? What sort of naming conventions go around them? It's really wild. And I actually find for me, I think one of the things that drew me to first playing Star Trek was like making up spaceships, like making up Federation starships. But I love this book. I think is really something that I think a lot of fans are going to be drawn to because it will give them the tools they need and the inspiration they need to create their own alien species to kind of, add in a little bit of variety here and there. So, but yeah, for me, the Talarians are kind of the one that I'm sort of going full bore in using the tools to create for my own campaign.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on that? And then we can go into gratitude. I think, Michael, unless you have any other questions for us, but I think any other last thoughts on what did we miss? What can we create with this? And then we'll go into gratitude.
No additional thoughts, Your Honor? This book has so much.
Yeah.
I would say just with the species that we didn't do for this, that I've converted over from first to second edition across the various species source books. We've probably got enough for another book this size, maybe.
Okay, let's do
it. Obviously, they're already put away in the conversion guides, and they're less detailed than this because I'm just doing the conversions. I'm not doing a full spread of talents for all of them or anything like that. In a lot of cases, I'm taking one of their existing talents and moving it into being their species ability. Whereas these are all fully fleshed out with background and a minimum of 2 talents each. So those ones would take some extra work to bring up to this standard, but I've got a good few. There's probably 4 or 5 a book that, just from the quadrant books alone, that didn't get converted over here because they were the more obscure ones. And I think more in the Gamma and Delta quadrant books because those are very much like episode of the week type species and have almost no information about them. So with some of the entries in here, that clearly didn't stop us.
Yeah, and of course, as of the recording of this show, Starfleet Academy is just about to come out. We're 2 weeks away from the premiere, and we know we got 2 seasons of that pretty much in hand to look forward to. So who knows what new species will be created, what new details about existing species will be added. So maybe we'll be looking at another version or a new book somewhere down the road. Who knows?
And 2 more seasons of Strange New Worlds as well.
That's right. Yeah, so more Star Trek to come. So maybe we'll see how it goes. But let's jump into gratitude, starting with Michael, Al, Nathan, Rachel, Stephen. I'll go around my corner on the screen. Okay. So Michael, kick us off with some gratitude.
Well, I'm thanking all these creators who are helping me make these books. I mean, we're talking again about the timeliness of it. Rachel creating the breathing apparatus complication table that I needed so desperately for my Benzite character, or Stephen. I had played Strange from the Political Actions 2 with my tabletop group. Loved it. You introduced their very first Badmiral because they're new players, so now they know what Badmiral means. So so the Species book just adds to that creative creativity, Jim, just funny to throw you back to show the wealth of all the books that have ever come out is last night I had the privilege of playing with Alex, the GM. It's Alex Runs Games. I played in his campaign. I came in as a guest star, and he was running the Shackleton campaign, which we had run our group. And Al, you'll laugh at this. Their group currently decided that because of the technology, they're going to move Romulus and Remus. And so I was cracking up that these two different games, he's in China running this game with people all around the world. We play for 5 years, but this wealth of information, all these puzzle pieces have started to form this mini universe in RPG. Blows my mind what people can do with these tools. One paragraph can spin off an entire universe of games. So my gratitude is all the creators out there who keep adding to this wonderful puzzle piece to put together.
Awesome. Nice. Al?
Yeah, I just want to give gratitude to all my mentors in the gaming community, Jim, Nate, Nathan, John Houlihan, giving me all these opportunities to write awesome content for great IPs. And, it's helped a lot in writing some of my own personal stuff. And, I'm just excited that you have each given me an opportunity to be a part of this. It's been spectacular.
Awesome, Al. Thank you. Always grateful to see everything that you're doing and where you started, where you're going. Can't wait to see what's next for you. Nathan, what's your gratitude?
My gratitude goes a little bit outside the community this time and towards my grandmother, who turns 100 later this week.
Woo!
Who's always been a supporter of creativity and imagination within the family, and it's a very creative family. All of my siblings and cousins, draw or paint or do something creative, if only as a hobby, whether as a hobby or as something more elaborate than that. Yes, so Peggy Stanlake turns 100.
I would love to meet this person. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that Centaurian.
This year.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nathan. And Rachel, your gratitude?
Oh, my. Well, I'm, of course, very grateful to be here among such wonderful creators. I know I've worked with almost all of you multiple times, and honestly, this is like the first time I'm actually speaking to one or two of you face to face, and this is really fun. So I'm very grateful for that. I am, of course, grateful to Jim. You're like the best lead that a gal could ever ask for. All of the creators here are spectacular. I have not had the opportunity to do art briefs, but I am always blown away by the quality of the art that goes on. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this wonderful universe and a part of this fantastic team.
Oh, I am so grateful to hear that, Rachel. Thank you so much. And Stephen, your gratitude?
Yeah, my gratitude, obviously, to all of you to put in working on this book and this opportunity to work on this book. Specifically, gratitude to you, Jim, for reaching out to me, and also for just being so open to that first pitch that I sent you, which I was incredibly nervous about sending. Had no idea how it would be received, was expecting a rejection, all the stuff about a freelancer, and it just was such an honor, and I hope it leads to more things. Michael, as well, you were actually my introduction to writing for Star Trek, for the Star Trek game, through continuing missions. And again, your openness and your eagerness around this and has just been a real pleasure. And then honestly, I just have so much gratitude to the gaming community in general, the people that I've played with. I play with a small group of gamers that have been into Star Trek Adventures even before I started. I think I've been playing in a campaign that's been lasting like 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. And it's still going strong, and they're just the most supportive and most interesting and most enthusiastic group. Chris, Anita, they'll know when they listen to this, they'll know who they are. And it's just been, it's been a real pleasure to be playing in this sandbox and writing for this sandbox now. And it's just a great thing. Thanks.
Oh gosh, that's awesome to hear. You guys are making me blush. So my gratitude, I'll go right back at you, is not just all of you, right? Obviously, because I'm so grateful for all of my writers and the developers who work on the game with me. But by extension, everybody in the Star Trek family who's been responsible for creating species, creating characters, creating aliens that, not just visually, like the makeup department and the art department and the actors who, the writers who create the words and then the actors who bring all those words to life. I mean, Stephen, you got a theater background, you know how it is. It's one thing to write the dialogue, but then you hear actors speak it and act, and you're like, oh, it's a whole different dimension. So grateful for all that. But I have to say specifically, I'm grateful to the five of you for all the work you did on this book. It's gratitude, but it's also like, oh, I wish I could strangle you all because
I didn't do any. Just so you know, it's four of you who did it.
No, but I mean, you've worked on the game in the same kind of way. But as I'm working on the book, right, I'm doing my edits, or I'm doing my line edits, or I'm editing the layout, or like all the endless things that I have to do to make the book into what it is. I often catch myself in the middle of the night working on it, stopping and like going off into daydream land, like, oh, I could be doing this campaign, or I could be doing this campaign. And then I think about Captain's Log. It's like, oh, I want to do a whole series of characters, of stories about, this Lanthanite or this Nausicaan or this other thing. And because like Nathan added so much detail to the history and lore for the characters, and then you all added so much color to each species, like even just the random tables. It's like, oh, there's just so much story I want to write and tell about Star Trek and character and all these different characters that, as a creative, it's like, I mean, obviously we're all creative, right? So we have a deep well of stuff that we can pull from, but then you drop something like this on me. It's like, oh shoot, now I've got all this more material I can play with. And it's like, I just don't have enough time in the day to tell all the stories I want to tell with all this stuff. And so I have to live vicariously through all the fans and the gamers and the players that are out there who are going to take this book and go do amazing things with it. And then I can sit and watch their YouTubes and their Twitches and read their reports online and stuff and say, oh, look at all the cool stuff that they're doing. So that's one of the big draws. One of the big gratitude things for me is like, I get to see them share it, or, we get to share it, and then I get to see it, reflected back. So I can't wait to see what people do with all this cool stuff that we're giving to them. So, but I'm grateful to all of you for helping enable that to happen. So really great stuff.
And just think of all the other stuff that we worked on after this book. We're not talking about yet.
Infinite stories, infinite combinations with all this magic. This is great. That's what we love. All right. Well, the conversation continues. And of course, we want to hear from all of you what you think about it. So comment in the comments on Facebook, social media, wherever, how you're using this book. And many good things to come, many more good things to come. IDIC.
Live long and prosper, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll see you all next time.